Adabarim. These be the words, chapter 30, verses 1 through 10. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 1 through 10. And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations where the Yahweh thy Elohim have driven thee, and shalt return unto Yahweh thy Elohim, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thine heart and with all thy soul, that then Yahweh thy Elohim will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations where the Yahweh thy Elohim have scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will Yahweh thy Elohim gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. And Yahweh thy Elohim will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it. And he will do thee good and multiply thee above thy fathers. And Yahweh thy Elohim will circumcise thine heart and the heart of thy seed, to love Yahweh thy Elohim with all thy heart and with all thy soul, that thou mayest live. And Yahweh thy Elohim will put all these curses upon thy enemies and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee. And thou shalt return and obey the voice of Yahweh, and do all his commandments which I command thee this day. And Yahweh thy Elohim will make thee plenteous in every work of thy hand, in the fruit of thy body, and in the fruit of thy cattle, and in the fruit of thy land, for good. For Yahweh will again rejoice over thee for good, as he rejoiced over thy fathers, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which are written in this book of the law. And if thou turn unto Yahweh thy Elohim with all thy heart and with all thy soul. Praise the Most High. That was Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 1 through 10. Now we turn to Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 58. Isaiah chapter 58, verses 12 to 14. Isaiah 58, 12, 13, and 14. And they that shall be of thee shall build the old waste places. Thou shalt raise up the foundations of many generations, and thou shalt be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of paths to dwell in. If thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of Yahweh honorable, and shalt honor him, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure, nor speaking thine own words, then shalt thou delight thyself in Yahweh. And I will cause thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father, for the mouth of Yahweh hath spoken it. Praise the Most High, yeah? That was Isaiah 58, verses 12, 13, and 14. Now we turn to the book of Acts, Acts of the Apostles, Acts chapter 13, Acts 13, verses 38 to 44, Acts chapter 13, verses 38 to 44. Be it known unto you, therefore, men and brethren, that through this man is preached unto you the forgiveness of sins, and by him all that believe are justified from all things from which ye could not be justified by the law of Moses. Beware, therefore, lest that come upon you which is spoken of in the prophets. Behold, ye despisers, and wonder and perish. For I work a work in your days, a work which ye shall in no wise believe, though a man declare it unto you. And when the Yahudim were gone out of the synagogue, the Gentiles besought that these words might be preached to them the next Sabbath. Now, when the congregation was broken up, many of the Yahudim and religious proselytes followed Paul and Barnabas, who, speaking to them, persuaded them to continue in the grace of Yahweh. And the next Sabbath day came almost the whole city together to hear the word of Yahweh. Acts chapter 13, verses 38 to 44. Now we turn to the epistle that was addressed to the Hebrews. Epistle addressed to the Hebrews, Hebrews chapter 8, Hebrews chapter 8, verses 6 through 12. Hebrews chapter 8, verses 6 through 12. But now hath he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he saith, Behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith Yahweh. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith Yahweh. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a Elohim, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know Yahweh, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. Hebrews chapter 8. Hebrews 8, that was, verses 6 through 12. Now we turn to the revelation of the Mashiach Yahushua. Revelation chapter 14. Revelation 14, verses 6, 7, and 12. Revelation 14, verses 6, 7, and 12. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear Yahweh, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. Verse 12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of Yahweh and the faith of Yahushua. That is Revelation chapter 14, verses 6, 7, and 12. Now we go to Revelation chapter 11. Revelation chapter 11, the seventh trumpet. Revelation chapter 11, verses 15 to 19. Revelation chapter 11, verses 15 to 19. And the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, The kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Adoni and of his Messiah, and he shall reign forever and ever. And the 24 elders, which sat before Yahweh on their seats, fell upon their faces and worshipped Yahweh, saying, We give thee thanks, O Yahweh al Shaddai, which art and wast and art to come, because thou hast taken to thee thy great power and his reign. And the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come. In the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great, and shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. And the temple of Yahweh was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament. And there were lightnings and voices and thunderings, and an earthquake and great hail. That was Revelation chapter 11, verses 15 to 19. Last but not least, we go back to Isaiah. Isaiah 66. Isaiah 66, verses 22 to 24. Isaiah 66, from verses 22 to 24. For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, saith Yahweh, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith Yahweh. And they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me. For their worm shall not die, neither shall their fire be quenched. And they shall be an abhorring unto all flesh. Praise the Most High Yah. Thus ends the morning's reading of the scriptures. Thank you, Sister Akath Isha, for posting those scriptures. We are studying the book of Revelation, but we are taking a detour into the prophecy of Daniel, reading Daniel to understand Revelation. So we're looking at that. And last night we studied Daniel chapter 2. We studied Daniel chapter 2. And as we said, this chapter of Daniel, this Daniel chapter 2 is extremely pivotal because it sets the foundation of prophecies going forward. It sets the foundation of prophecies going forward. And that's why it was an important prophecy, obviously, because Nebuchadnezzar was given this prior, and then Daniel was given to teach him what it meant. And so we saw in Daniel chapter 2 that there were 4 empires that were going to rule on the earth. Now, there's been a lot of empires on the earth. Make no mistake. Almost every nation that is represented on the earth has in its past some sort of dynasty or empire, or several of them. China has empires, right? Indians have different empires. Aztec Indians have empires. Different nations of Indians, both in what's now called the United States, Central America, South America, had empires. Of course, there's been many African nations that have empires. Then, of course, you have European empires. You have empires that are England had empires. You know, different nations have empires. So there are many. There are Indian empires from East India. Many different empires across the history of planet Earth. But the Most High has chosen 4 particular empires to represent a time period from the time of ancient Babylon until the establishment of the kingdom of the Messiah. He has chosen 4. And the reason, I don't know reason why he chose all 4, I can't speak for the Most High, but I do know that the 4th one that he chose is the key to what's going on in these last days and what's getting ready to happen. The 4th one. And so as we looked at Nebuchadnezzar's dream and the statue that he saw, and we saw this great image that had gold and silver and brass and iron, and then iron and clay in it. And we saw that this statue stood until a stone came and destroyed it. And the stone, Daniel explained to Nebuchadnezzar and said that for as much as thou sawest, verse 45 of Daniel chapter 2, for as much as thou sawest that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it brake in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, yea, the great Elohim have made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. So he says, the God of heaven, in verse 44, let me read verse 44. And in the days of these kings, it says, shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Notice he said, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. There's not going to be another nation aside from the New Jerusalem, aside from the nation of Israel that are going to be ruling on this earth. There's not going to be another nation that's going to come and run things. And all of these kingdoms are represented until the stone hits the statue. And the last kingdom that's around at the foot of the statue is the iron and the clay, which we saw. The gold was Babylon, the silver was Media Persia, the brass was Greece, and the iron is Rome. And then we saw the iron mixed with miry clay, being that the clay is a representation of all the other man-made religions that Rome controls on the earth. The man-made religions of Asatan that Rome controls on the earth. So we saw that there's these kingdoms and these religions and these powers are trying to mingle themselves together to create a one world government or one world order that defies the Most High. Yeah. And so we saw that. And now we're going to see more as we study Daniel chapter 7, because we talked about how this is a thing that many people might ask. We talked about how Rome is in charge today. And somebody said, well, we don't see no Caesars today, no Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar around today. And Rome, even in the Catholic sense, doesn't have any military, power over the United States, rules militarily, right? People might say that, and that's a good observation. But I think if you look closely, you will see Rome's fingerprints all over the United States in terms of everything that it does. I think if you look closely, you will see how the presidents, no matter what president it is, bows to the Pope of Rome, bows to him. Okay, I think you can see that. And I think you can see how also, if you look closely, in powerful positions in the United States, especially things like the Supreme Court, are run between the Roman Catholic Church and the Ashkenazi Jews. I think you can see that, right? So, like, if you look at the Supreme Court of the United States, there's 9 justices of the Supreme Court. 7 of them are Roman Catholic. 2 of them are Ashkenazi Jewish. Huh? 7 Roman Catholics. See, they get you caught up in how many women and how many conservatives and how many liberals there are on the Supreme Court. That's what they do. They get people. So people are looking right at it and can't see it. See, this is a country that's supposed to be a Protestant Christian nation, right? Ain't no Protestant Christians on the Supreme Court. They're all Ashkenazi Jews or Roman Catholics. That's all there are in the Supreme Court. There's only 9, and all 9 are one or the other, right? The most powerful media outlets, Ashkenazi Jews and Roman Catholics. Huh? The most powerful people on television, Ashkenazi Jews and Roman Catholics. That's all you got running things here. And they work together. Rome controls the Ashkenazi Jew. Ashkenazi Jew is not your Hebrew Israelite. They are European under the sons of Yafet. So they're under the control of Rome. Okay? They're Jews that are not. Synagogue is safe. So you can see that these things are here and existing, but most people will not see them because they're not looking. And their minds are being confused and misguided by all of these things like conservative and liberal and so on and so forth, and women's rights and all this garbage. Your mind's being misdirected from what's happening. So here in Daniel chapter 7, we're going to begin Daniel 7, and we're going to remember now there's 4 empires: Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, and Rome. Remember, there's 4. That's going to come into play here. And we're going to see how the 4th one is going to be different from all the others. The Roman one is different. And we're going to talk about that. As a matter of fact, Daniel 7 is going to talk about it. It's going to be different from all the other ones. Okay? So, also, we're going to look at Daniel 7 now, but we're going to come back to Daniel 7 when we study Revelation later. I'll explain that as we get to it. But let's take a look at Daniel chapter 7, and let's look at Daniel 7 from verse 1 down to verse 3. Okay? Daniel 7, 1 to 3. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. And then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. And 4 beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. So now we're going to stop again and just, go through this bit by bit slowly so that people can grasp it. This is the first year of Belshazzar. Belshazzar is Nebuchadnezzar's grandson. He is the one that was king when the writing came on the wall and the kingdom was given over to the Medes and Persians. This obviously, chapter 7, this is an interesting point that I want to bring out. Obviously, the events of chapter 7 happened prior to the events of chapter 5, being that we see in chapter 5 Belshazzar being killed. So in chapter 7, we see Belshazzar's first year as king. If it's the year he was killed, I don't know. But we're going to see, well, actually, it's not, because then we see in chapter 8 that Daniel had a vision that occurred in the 3rd year of Belshazzar. So the events of both chapter 7 and chapter 8 take place prior to the events of chapter 5. And why do I bring that out? To show the point that not everything is chronological from left to right among the prophet's scrolls. Okay, so when we're reading Daniel, is some mostly chronological, but not necessarily all. The same with Revelation. It's mostly chronological, but not necessarily all. And by understanding these things, it helps you understand that book, because not all of it is chronological. Okay, so here Daniel is having this vision, and he had it while he was sleeping. He was on his bed, and he had a dream, and Belshazzar was king at that time. Okay, all right. So now, Daniel chapter 7, verse 2 said, he saw, what did he see? He saw by night, he saw four winds striving upon a great sea. Now, obviously, when the Bible talks about four winds, there are generally four directions that it's talking about: north, south, east, and west. Generally, that's what it's talking about. It's not northwest, southwest, southeast, northeast, or anything like that. It's generally north, south, east, and west. So these four winds that are blowing north, south, east, and west, they're blowing upon a great sea. Now, we saw four winds being held in Revelation chapter 7. And we're going to see more of that as we study Revelation chapter 7. But let's go to Revelation 7 right now, and let's see. Revelation chapter 7. Revelation chapter 7. We're going to begin at verse 1. And let's read verse 1 down to verse 3. Revelation chapter 7, verse 1 to verse 3. And after these things, I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living Elohim. And he cried with a loud voice to the four angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our Elohim in their foreheads. So these four winds were winds of strife that would hurt the earth. And then here in Daniel chapter 7, he sees four winds, and they were striving also. So these are representing striving winds. These are strife happening on the earth. Strife happens on the earth, right? Strife happens among people. Strife doesn't happen in a vacuum. Strife needs people. Isn't that correct? So in order for there to be strife that we recognize, people have to be involved. Well, let's see again in prophecy, what does the sea represent? In Revelation chapter 17, and Revelation 17 and verse 15, Revelation 17 and verse 15, notice what it says, Revelation 17, verse 15, and he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So the waters are representing peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And the strife among them from the four winds is strife among peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. So in other words, it's times of war and strife. Everybody with me so far? So Daniel chapter 7, when he says he saw four winds of heaven strive upon the great sea, he sees strife or war among different nations from different corners of the earth, north, south, east, and west. And that's what you're going to get as long as Asatan is alive. You're going to have strife on the earth. There's never going to be a time where there's not strife on the earth. There will always be war. It will never go away. Because why? Because Asatan is at war with our Father in heaven. He's at war with the government of heaven. He's at war with Mashiach Yahushua. And so as long as that's the case, there will be war on the earth. It will not stop. So everybody wants peace on earth, but they don't want the Most High. You can't have peace on earth without the Most High, because you're only going to have two entities, Asatan or the Most High. Whether they believe they exist or not does not stop them from doing what's going on, okay? So you're going to have war on the earth as long as Asatan is alive. There's going to be strife. The day Asatan is put to death, the day war stops forever, okay? But Daniel saw that there was something different about these wars. These wars produced 4 great beasts. See, so out of the 4 winds from the war that's been going on the earth continually, 4 beasts came up. 4 beasts or 4 animals came up. And it said that these animals were diverse one from another. So now, before we continue, we need to let the Bible tell us, what does a beast represent? Because you see beasts both in Daniel and Revelation, don't you? You see the woman, the great whore, riding a beast. You see a beast that rises up out of a bottomless pit. You see animals or beasts in the book of Revelation. So we need to understand, what does a beast represent? And let's take a look at it. Daniel chapter 7, verse 17. Daniel 7:17. These great beasts, which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. Okay. 4 winds of heaven fighting with one another. As a result of their strife among peoples, nations, and multitudes, 4 kingdoms come out of the strife. See, on earth, kingdoms are not established in peace. Kingdoms are established by war. They're established by bloodshed. Kingdoms are established. Every nation that you have on the earth, every single one was established with blood. Not one was established without blood. Okay? You will never establish a kingdom without some people getting killed, because people will always be fighting for power. That's just how it is on planet Earth, because of Asatan's fighting for power. The United States of America itself is the result of a revolution, called the Revolutionary War. Its existence comes about by the destruction of the Indians that were already here, and of course the Revolutionary War against other Caucasians that wanted power here, namely the English. And so the Caucasians from England came and fought against Caucasians that killed the Indians, and the Caucasians that were here won, as the Bible predicted they would. So you have fighting and strife. All the nations on the earth are developed as a result of bloodshed. And so here, this is no exception. These 4 kingdoms come up as a result of bloodshed. Okay? There you go. So now, by the way, as an aside, you know, and I know, I just want to make this plain for the people that are listening. We don't believe there's any such thing as a white man. We don't believe there's any such thing as a white man. Do you know that? Do you know why we don't believe there's any such thing as a white man? Now, we say white out of ignorance and habit, really. But you know why we don't believe there's any such thing as a white man? Because when you look at the word white, if you look up the word white, what does it mean? And say you did a definition of white. Well, yes, it means pure, means clean, it means righteous, it means dazzling, right? So the people that are called white, do you think as a group they represent pure, clean, dazzling, righteousness? So it would not be proper to be calling them white, then, would it? More than likely, you want to call them from where they come from. So they are sons of Japhet, and most of them come from the Caucasus Mountains, right? From where Japhet settled, the Caucasus Mountains. So that's why they're mostly called Caucasian or Anglo-Saxon. That's why they're called Caucasian or Anglo-Saxon, because they originate from the Caucasus Mountains. Now, why did they insist on people calling them white? Well, it's pretty obvious, because when they came here, see, in Europe, they did not call themselves white in Europe, because they were all Caucasian or Anglo-Saxon, and they hated each other. The different nations, Ireland, Poland, England, France, Spain, they fought against each other, right? So where did white come from? Well, when they came here to this land, they had Indians here and they had Africans here. And Indians and Africans look very much alike. And so at that time, the poor among the Indians, Africans, and European Caucasians were actually getting together and understanding that ruling classes were controlling them. This is true. And they were deciding what they should do about these ruling classes. The same thing that happened in Europe when they overthrew Marie Antoinette and the king in France and beheaded them when she said, let them eat cake. Well, the ruling classes here were also trying to decide what they should do. So what happened? The ruling classes told the people that are from Europe should be classified as white. That would allow the poor people that were Caucasian to feel like they were some part of the rich, even though they weren't. It would allow them to think that they were close in class to them, even though they weren't. And it would allow them to be separated from the brown-skinned people with whom they shared economic poverty. So therefore, they separated, they divided and conquered. So they called these people white and other people brown, black, Indian, whatever. And so you had this white word that became pure and righteous and honorable and clean and dazzling. And so people now, then of course, they introduced who? White Jesus. So now you have your Messiah, the Savior of the world, is white in the man. He's a white Caucasian man that is white and dazzling and righteous. And he has a people that are ruling the earth that are white and dazzling and righteous and clean and fair dealing. Isn't that's what happened? So now you look at the Caucasian man and you start to think he's better than everybody because after all, the Messiah looks like him. Right? So it's a psychological warfare that has gone on for more than 500 years. But with the awakening to the truth, we are understanding this lie, this falsehood. And so I say to you, there's actually no such thing as a white man. There is a Caucasian man, there is an Anglo-Saxon man, but there's no man that is white. Even the color of the skin is not white. It's actually like a pinkish, palish color, right? It's not white. You could take a white napkin or a white sheet and put it next to a Caucasian person's skin and you will see it's not the same color, right? Now, there's some black people on the earth where you took a black belt and put it next to their skin, you're not going to see too much difference. You're just not going to see too much difference. See, so anyway, that's where you got white from. So when I'm conscious of it, I don't call people white. I call people, if they're of the European descent, I'll say either they're European, they're Caucasian, they're Anglo-Saxon. But to call them white is to buy into the superiority of the white privilege complex that has been developed in the culture. And I choose not to participate. You understand? I just wanted everybody to understand that. There's no such thing as a white man. Now, you can call Messiah white in the sense of his character because he is surely righteous, dazzling, and clean. And as a matter of fact, the Bible does mention that in Songs of Solomon, where she says, my beloved is white. What she's trying to say is he's dazzling. She's not trying to say his skin is white, but he's dazzling. Yes, because of the blue hue to the skin. That's exactly right. Because of the melanation, it can become dark, dark, very dark. And of course, most of the people of the earth are brown. And even scientists, and I don't subscribe too much to science, so please don't take too much from this, but if everything was left to itself, everybody would end up being brown, the way the world is now, right? Because if you keep mixing people, eventually brown and black dominate. That's the dominant gene. Eventually, there's going to be no pale people. Eventually, everybody will be some shade of brown. That's exactly what's going on. As you see the United States, when the more people are mixing together, the more browner people are becoming. Every color comes from black. Every color originates from black. Black is the original color, and everything originates from it. Yeah. So yeah, so I mean that's just how it is, and people can see that. That's one of the reasons that you're seeing a large increase in skinhead Klan, Ku Klux Klan, and white nationalist, so-called white nationalist activity, because people are seeing that. They're actually seeing that everything is becoming brown, and they don't like it. You know, people of European descent don't like it. They don't like the fact that everything's becoming brown. They don't like it. But it's not going to be stopped. I mean, after all, it's the creator's design to create people whatever color he creates them, correct? I mean, it's his design. Now, sin has caused, strong, extremes in color. But most people are of color are some sort of brown. Most people that have color are some sort of brown. But yeah. But you have extremes of black and very fair skin, which they call white. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. The earth was dark, the Bible says, and without light. And then he said, let there be light. There you go. Everything starts off dark. And then out of it comes colors. Yeah. Yes. So anyway, I just wanted to clear that up. But so now you have the back to Daniel chapter 7. So you have four kingdoms, four empires that rise up out of war and strife. You will. You have four empires that rise up out of war and strife. And he's going to describe. Now, wait a minute. Before we even go into the four empires, we already know what the empires are, right? From Daniel chapter 2. We don't have to guess. And this is another thing. See, let me just, again, I'm going to take my time here. But we already know what the four empires are. They're Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, and Rome, correct? I mean, we knew that from Daniel chapter 2. So now it's being repeated in Daniel chapter 7. But I just want to say there are some people that get confused and think that these four are different from the four in Daniel chapter 2. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I just want to address it. And the reason I see people see that is because we're used to reading the Bible as if every verse is its own island. And we're used to reading the Bible as if every chapter is its own island and as if every book in it is its own island. And this is not true. We must read the Bible as a whole, as a group. So when you're studying a subject in the Bible, you understand it as a wholeness of the whole scriptures. You understand? It's not like an island unto itself. But the people that want to say there's no law, mostly the Christians, they're the ones that teach you to read the Greek style of looking at just one verse and thinking that you can get a whole denomination based on one verse of the Bible. And no, it's not true. To properly understand the Bible, you have to look at it as an entirety and the subject matter as a whole, as the Bible addresses it. That's how you can see it clearly. So here we saw that there were four kingdoms in Nebuchadnezzar's statue, and here Daniel sees four kingdoms, right? So we know they're the same four. So that without even starting, we know the first one we're going to look at is Babylon. So let's take a look at that. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 4, which is describing the first beast that Daniel saw, Babylon. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man. And a man's heart was given to it. So we know this is representing Babylon. So Babylon is represented like a lion with eagle's wings. Very interesting, because we know that the tribe of Judah is also represented like a lion, right? So, but Judah is not Babylon. I don't want to get anybody out here trying to get some new philosophy about Judah being Babylon. This is not the same thing. Babylon is a pagan empire of the sons of Ham, right? And Judah is the kingdom of part of the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel from the Most High Yahweh. Okay, everybody got that so far? Okay, all right. So I just want to make sure we understand that. Now, notice what happened. It had wings. What do wings generally cause an animal to do? Wings generally cause it to fly, right? So this lion that's representing Babylon had eagle's wings, so it was flying. Eagle being one of the most powerful birds of prey in the world, right? So this Babylon, why did it have eagle's wings? Well, it was flying quickly. It was taking over the earth, which today we would call North Africa, Middle East, India. We would call Asia Minor, Turkey, Iran, Iraq. All of these areas were being controlled and taken over by the kingdom of Babylon. Okay, and it was doing it very quickly. So you can see the wings. But then it said the wings were plucked, and it was plucked and made to stand upon the feet as a man. So after it took over, it stayed still, right? It became an institution. But then it became had a man's heart. What does that mean when it had a man's heart? Let's take a look. Jeremiah chapter 17, from verse 5 down to verse 9. Jeremiah chapter 17, from verse 5, actually from verse 5 to 10. Jeremiah 17, 5 to 10. What does it mean when it said a man's heart was given to it? Notice what happened. Thus saith Yahweh, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departeth from Yahweh. Okay, cursed be the man. We're going to read from verse 5 to 10. So we're reading it in the context, so you're going to see the whole thing. But it says, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, that maketh flesh his arm, whose heart departeth from Yahweh. For he shall be like a heath in the desert, and shall not see when good cometh, but shall inhabit the parched places in the wilderness, in a salt land, and not inhabited. Blessed is the man that trusteth in Yahweh, and whose hope Yahweh is. For he shall be as a tree planted by the waters, that spreadeth out her roots by the river, and shall not see when heat cometh, but her leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful in the year of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit. The heart is deceitful above all things, and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, Yahweh, search the heart and try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his doing. So now, this kingdom was like a lion and had eagle's wings, but then the wings are plucked. It stood up like a man and had a man's heart. So it was trusting in man, and it was being deceitful and desperately wicked. Well, don't we see that in Belshazzar's destruction? When Belshazzar had his party and he started taking the holy vessels from what they had taken out of Jerusalem and using them in his party, and this is after his grandfather had gotten converted to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. After he got converted, and the grandson knew about his conversion, and the grandson went back to the paganism, and not only went back to the paganism, but disrespected the holy vessels. And that's why Daniel said, that's why the hand came, and your kingdom is weighed in the balances and found wanting, and is finished. And that very night he was killed. That's what this is representing here. Everybody got that? Everybody got that? Okay. Yes, desperately wicked, deceitful, and desperately wicked. Bathama. Deceitful, desperately wicked, and generally prone to trust in man and not the creator, right? So our natural state is to trust in man. Our natural state is to not trust the creator. Our natural state is desperate wickedness and deceit, self-deceit. Why is that? Because our fathers bit of the tree of the one who is the creator of lies. Therefore, we are after his order now. Until we are born again of the spirit of righteousness from our Father, then we become a new person. Yes, the natural man. That's right, the natural man. That's why it says a man's heart was given to it. So that's Babylon. Let's continue. Daniel, we're going to stay in this little section for a while because there's a lot we got to see here. I want to show you, okay? So here, Daniel chapter 7, let's look at the second beast, which is Media Persia. Daniel chapter 7, verse 5. And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side. It had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. This is the Medes and the Persians. Notice it was Medes and Persians, right? So there's 2 of them. There's Medes and Persians. So they're sharing the kingdom. They said, remember what Daniel told Belshazzar? He said, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. And so it started off with Darius the Mede. If you recall from Daniel chapter 5, the Median became the king first, but the last king was Ahasuerus, who was a Persian. So you start off with the Medes and you end up with the Persians. The Persians became more powerful. They became richer. And we're going to see that as we look at Daniel chapter 8 later. The Persian part became the more powerful part. That's why the bear was on one side. You see, when one part of you is stronger, you say you hurt your leg, right? And they say you hurt your left leg, so you favor it, which means that you lean more on your right leg. Does that make sense? So if your left leg is hurting and you're favoring it, that means you're leaning more on your right leg and you're putting less pressure on your left leg. So this bear was raised up on one side, which means the Persians were more powerful than the Medes. So they were favoring the Medes, which means the Medes were the weaker one. Okay. It also had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, 3 ribs. Historically speaking, the Persians had to overcome 3 empires to take over the world empire. They had to overcome Babylon, which they did. They had to overcome Egypt, which they did. They had to overcome Greece, which they did. So they overcame Greece, Babylon, and Egypt to take over the earth. Okay, that's why I had 3 ribs, 3 empires that had to be overcome. That makes sense, brothers and sisters? 3 empires that had to be overcome for them to dominate. Okay, so this one had 3 ribs and it raised up on one side. It was a bear, very powerful, and it said, arise, devour much flesh. So it was going to just come and destroy and take. And remember, these are 4 kingdoms that came out of strife and war, winds from 4 winds. And so as a result of strife and war comes Medes and Persians. These is the silver. The next we know to be Greece, the 4th one, which is the brass one that Nebuchadnezzar saw. Greece, let's take a look at that one. Verse 6, Daniel chapter 7 and verse 6. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Oh, so wait, this one is like a leopard. What do we know about the animal that is called a leopard? By the way, one of my favorite animals to study. I have a whole video on just the leopard because it's a very interesting animal. They are fast, but they're not like fast afoot, like running a straight line. Like the cheetah is the fastest of the cats. The cheetah is the fastest one, but the leopard is quick. Like it will crawl up on you and then pounce with great speed and quickness and power, right? So like a leopard is not like a cheetah. So like if a cheetah was sitting in the African desert somewhere, or sitting in a great field somewhere, and it saw a leopard coming, the leopard would not be able to catch the cheetah, because the cheetah can run from 0 to 70 in like 3 seconds. Very, very, very quick. But the leopard would have to stealthily, right? It would have to stealthily creep up on the cheetah or whatever prey. That's what a leopard does. It's stealthily, quietly. It's been known for almost an entire 12-hour period to stay in one place in a creep position to stalk out its prey. And when it's ready to pounce, it will come extremely quickly and extremely powerfully so that the prey has no shot. The element of surprise is there, plus the power of the animal. A leopard can weigh about 200 pounds. So it's a very powerful animal. And so when it swipes you and it bites you in the neck, it comes very quickly and it's over within seconds. So it comes very stealthily and quickly. It's not as much fast as it is quick. So it comes upon you and you don't know that it's there, and all of a sudden, boom, it's over. Exactly right. So you didn't know what hit you. Happened very quickly. It does that to its prey. So this one had a leopard and it had 4 wings. So even though it was stealthily coming, it was coming very, very quickly. Okay, very, very quickly. Now, the thing about the leopard that's interesting, that's different from any leopard that you or I ever would know, is that this leopard had 4 heads. Have you ever seen a leopard, a live leopard, either in person or on TV or in a zoo, with 4 heads? No, but this one had 4 heads. So obviously there's 4 divisions. Now I want you to pay attention. Now we've seen a lion, we've seen a bear, and we've seen a leopard with 4 heads. Pay attention now. And I want you to understand, remember, when we looked at Daniel's statue in Daniel 2, Nebuchadnezzar's statue, remember the statue was in one place until the stone hit its feet. Like it was one statue. Like you had the gold, the silver, the brass, and the iron with the iron and miry clay. It was all one statue until it was destroyed by the stone. So in other words, it was in one statue. Even though they were divided, they were in one body. I mean, you're going to understand that as I explain it as we go further, but pay attention to that. You're going to need to know that. Okay? Okay. So we see that the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great is represented as this leopard, and Alexander the Great, historically speaking, was the youngest general to take over the world. There's no general younger than him that conquered the way he did. He was only 19 years old when he started taking over nations. Obviously, this man had a gift for bloodthirsty conquest. He had a gift for it because he was only 19 years old and he led armies and they took over nations. Yes. He died by the time he was 33. Don't know if he was poisoned. Some people say he drank himself to death, but he died by the time he was 33. And he had 4 generals, 4, like the 4 heads, and they took over the nation. They took over the kingdom. Okay. Live fast and die young. Isn't that what happens? Live fast and die young. So anyway, that was Greece. Now we have the 4th empire, which we know to be Rome. And I want you to notice the description of Rome. Daniel chapter 7, verse 8. Daniel chapter 7, verse 8. I considered the horns. I'm sorry. Verse 7. I'm sorry. I said 8. I'm sorry. My mistake, Sister Josie. It's Daniel 7:7. Sorry. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast. There it is. A 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. Now, remember Daniel's statue? Remember Daniel's statue? How many toes are generally in a man's feet? How many toes are in a man's feet? 10. That's right. And notice this fourth beast had 10 horns. Do you think that's coincident that there's 10 toes and 10 horns? I don't think so. You're going to see something else. Wait a minute. This one had great iron teeth. You think it's any coincidence that the teeth of it were iron? No, It's the Iron Kingdom. It's Rome, right? And it devoured and break in pieces. Now, wait a minute. I want to also mention about the fourth one. I want you to notice what it said now. Strong exceedingly. Also, mention what it said. All the kingdoms were before it were different than this one. This one was different than all the ones that were before. Okay, so it was very strong, very powerful, ruthless even. Okay, it had 10 divisions of power. Horn represents power, and it was different from everything else that came before it. Different. We're going to see the difference. Now, I want you to notice something. Okay, watch very carefully now. I want to make sure you're paying attention. I mean, please, whatever you're doing, pay attention because I don't want to lose you here. This is very important. Okay, now watch very carefully. I want you to notice the different animals that are represented in these four beasts. Okay, are you ready? Let's take a look. The first one was what kind of animal? Babylon was what animal? What animal was Babylon? Notice the animals. How many animals? A lion. Very good. Okay, you're going to think this is silly until I show you the punchline. Then the second animal was what? The second animal was what? The second animal, you had a lion, then you had what? What did you have next? A bear. Okay, a bear. Then you had a third animal, and the third animal, which we spent a little time on, was what? A third animal was what? What was it? A leopard. So wait a minute. What do we have so far? We have a lion, we have a bear, and we have a leopard. Okay. If you were to take all, and remember now, listen carefully, the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw was one statue with different metals in it. So let's say these are all one kingdom. Let's say these kingdoms combine. Let's say these four kingdoms combine. So you have a kingdom with a lion, a bear, and a leopard in it, right? How many heads are in the kingdom with the four kingdoms all together? How many heads? Let's take a look at it one at a time. How many heads did the lion have? How many heads did the lion have? Pay attention now. How many heads did the lion have? You're going to do some addition. The lion had one head. How many heads did the bear have? How many heads did the bear have? One. That's right. How many heads did the leopard have? The leopard. How many heads did it have? How many heads did the leopard have? The leopard. Daniel 7, verse 6. Daniel 7, verse 6. Take a look at the verse. Before you answer, take a look at it. How many heads did the leopard have? 4. Thank you. So you have 1 for the lion, 1 for the bear, and 4 for the leopard. Altogether, if you add 1 and 4, you end up with 6 heads. Okay? But then, of course, you have the fourth beast, and that has 1 head. So you have 4 and 4. I'm sorry. You have 1 and 1 and 4 and 2 and 1. So now you have 7 heads altogether. You have a lion, you have a bear, you have a leopard, and you have 7 heads. That sounds familiar. 7 heads with a lion, a leopard, and a bear. Doesn't that sound familiar? 7 heads with a lion, a leopard, and a bear. Where have we seen that? We have seen it. Where have we seen 7 heads with a lion, a leopard, and a bear? Let's take a look at the book of Revelation. Revelation chapter 13. Pay very close attention as you're going to see the connection, the definite connection between Daniel 7 and Revelation 13. Notice Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. Revelation, actually verse 1 and 2. Revelation 13, verse 1 and 2. Pay very close attention. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast, an animal, rise up out of the sea. Now, this animal had 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and seat and great authority. Well then, do you see this? The four diverse beasts of Daniel 7 come together to make up what is known as the fourth beast of Revelation 13, which is the fourth beast of Daniel 7. They come together. Do you see it? It's a combined kingdom. Absolutely. It's led by Rome. That when you say, well, how can that be? And how? Well, just look at the Pope. Look at the Pope. He has on a fish hat. That's a Hamitic god. Dagon, right? He has a cross but it's not a normal cross. It's a Egyptian cross that he carries. A Maltese cross, an Egyptian cross that he carries. They worship the sun god. It was Rome that says Christians should start keeping Sunday. They created Christianity and Sunday worship. Sun god comes out of Babylon. Okay? It is Rome that says they are infallible and they cannot be wrong. That's part of their doctrine. And remember, the law of the Medes and the Persians is once they make a law, it can never be altered. That's where Rome gets it from. Okay? Wait a minute, we're not finished. The education system, with all of these Catholic schools that are very popular, Villanova, right? Villanova, Georgetown, right? Loyola, Marymount, right? All these Catholic schools, Syracuse is a Catholic school, Boston College, all these Catholic schools that are very popular, very expensive, very well reputed, serving you Greek education system of degrees. That's where it comes from, Greek education system. That's where it comes from. So your education system is Greek. Your style is Media Persian. Your worship style, your government style is Media Persian. Your worship style is Babylonian. Are you following me so far? Your worship style, Babylonian. Your education system is Greek. Your government style is Median Persian. You're following me so far? That's why they combine. Well, wait a minute. We're not finished. Isn't that powerful, though? I mean, you understand what I'm saying? Not many people see what we just saw. Not many people understand what we just saw. That's why I took my time and made sure y'all got it. Because you see, Daniel is telling you what Revelation 13 is showing. You see it now? Daniel 7 is telling you what Revelation 13, what you're seeing. You understand? So you see the combination of the lion, the leopard, and the bear with the animal that had the 10 horns, right? Right? You see it. Animal with the 10 horns. So you got 7 heads and 10 horns. One of those heads is Rome with his 10 horns. So basically, picture the scene. You got one-headed animal with 10 horns on it. That's the crown. And then you have the other 6 heads that is based on as well. Okay, I'm gonna take a break right here. I'm gonna stop right here I want you all to digest that because we're gonna come back. There's a lot more in Daniel chapter 7. We're not gonna do a sermon today. We're gonna study Daniel 7 some more. Okay, so I'm gonna stop here. Then I'm gonna come back and do a part 2 because I want y'all to catch what we just read. I want y'all to digest that over the break. Okay, because that's a lot. What I just gave you, and I'm definitely not bragging. It's not me. It's the Most High Yah. But I want to tell you this. Very few people on earth know what I just told you. And it's not because it's hidden from them. It's because they don't study the word. They're looking at man in churches. Very few people on the earth know what I just told you. Okay? And it's very clearly in the Bible. I'm not hiding it from anybody. It's right there. Right there. Daniel 7 and Revelation 13. You can see it right there. Right? I mean, right? So let's have a word of prayer, and then we're going to take a break and come back and do part 2 of this study, okay?